if they did, as soon as they weren't aligned with him, he would feel, I got to get out of here. Who needs this? But that moon, that feeling, it has a strong effect on his Mercury and Venus. His Mercury is in Cancer. It's affected by the moon. So, and he needs to communicate with friends over, but it's going to be affected by his attitude to home and family. The kids, so like, or traditional, or what's security, or let's make America great again. Let's make the colonial white empire great again, like it was much better than it is now. So like, let's go back for it. So his moon, his attitude, his feelings about how he understands it should be, what's right and wrong, about immigration, but different things. He has these, building the wall, has these things. He has the Mercury in Cancer. We, the team, can do it. I think we can do it. We can live for this. How we're living for and how we're thinking is going to be there. His Mercury, it's in the 11th house of teams and peer pressure groups, so he's able to express himself to his group. Like, this is why things are so polarized, like around him, is that he has people who are on his team, on his family, in his feelings, in his camp, and he can kind of talk to them. But when it comes to anyone not in his camp, he's not secure enough to talk to them, clearly. Now, his Mercury is also has the one difficult aspect of square to Neptune. That's the deceptive, confusing, anything is possible mind. It's always trying to figure out everything. It's always got an answer for everything. It's got a plan for everything, but it's convoluted. He doesn't always see clearly. So he might see very clearly around business or money. That Neptune's in the 7th house, but he has visions of what would make it, and then he thinks how he can manipulate people, or how he can get people together, to pull it together to make that happen. But it's not a reliable mind. His planning is gullible. It's not like, and here's the person who's in charge of the courts and in charge of the military and in charge of the government. It's where he's not, there's a confusing, you could say even a prejudicial or confusing or deceptive element to his thinking. That's normal to him. He's always figuring out what everyone's doing. He's always thinking, is this, thinking that. He gets absorbed in his thinking, which gets affected by his sense of security and family once he changes. So you can see how his attitude to wanting to get things back the way they were, and how immigration is a threat and globalization is a threat. The old ways were better. So he has that Mercury is a puzzle in here. But that is with Neptune. He's told so many lies and untruths and distortions and half-truths. He obscures anything. It's hard to get to exact facts. And when they come to exact facts, he assumes that's not real. That's not real. That's false news. And he has a group of people, 11 house, who will believe it and a group who don't. Okay, so that's the Mercury Neptune. That's a big factor in terms of how he's thinking. And that's why nobody can figure out how he's thinking, because it's twisted. It's not simple. It's somewhat biased and is based on his sense of understanding of his sense of insecurity. So the Mercury puts a lot of emphasis, being in Cancer, on security, and it comes out to try and find people who have the same insecurities or securities. Then his Venus is in Cancer also, and it's in the 11th house of, and it's conjunct Saturn, so it's inhibited. Saturn Venus is inhibited, and it's considered one of the stingy or selfish aspects, but I'm not appreciated, there's not enough money, there's not resources, we're losing things, there's restricted things. So we could see what groups are diminishing his resources. Again, it's influenced by his insecurity of his moon, of his understanding of his moon. It affects what he's losing, what he's not getting, how other people are making more money, whatever. All of these things, they affect him and affect the way he thinks. And therefore, they come out to be the policies that he pushes, he projects out to make happen so that he can influence other people. His rising by me chart. Okay, the Saturn on it means he's never going to be satisfied, never going to be contented, but he tends to be selfish and stingy and controlled, and hence putting caps on China, putting controls on countries, and putting tariffs and taxes and cutting back on, even with neighbors, if it's costing money. That's how he thinks. It's very conservative thinking like that. It's not progressive. But it's inhibited with the Saturn on the Venus. But at the same time, that inhibition forces them to be ambitious. I got to get more. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. There's never enough. Okay. Unfortunately, that's closed way of, it's not an issue of sharing. And if you took it to policy, sharing the world, sharing policies with the world, it's not a giving nature. It's a more defensive approach to everything, even to, especially to friends. Okay, so it's funny how he would idealize he would idealize all the radical elements in extreme countries, but the countries closest to him, he has a really detached defense about. So anyway, like this, we can play along this for a long time, but just trying to get into some of the qualities of the chart and some of the controversies around him. Okay, so his sun up in the 10th house in Gemini, it's opposed to the moon, but it's conjunct Uranus. So the past and the future fight, but his sense of Geminis are independent enough. Conjunct Uranus, I got to do my own thing. I'm going to have my own business. I'm going to do my own thing. He's going to have that genius to doing his own business, to making his own thing, to be standing on his own. And he's not going to think he owes it to anybody. He's going to think, this is I'm doing this. At my hotel tonight, I built this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Yes, that need to be exciting. It need to be. He sees independent power, Uranus on the sun up in the 10th house, in Gemini, used independently for himself. Geminis have difficulty in politics, but to have the influence and to have the power to change things, to make it work in your favor, I can do this. There's the sun in Gemini up in the 10th. So he has a very strong sense of status and position, but very, with his moon being so afflicted, it comes at a cost. For as big as he can be out in the world, it's as weak as he could be in his personal world. That full moon and the eclipse. So there's a shadow on his power. And on the eclipses, they can be very strong spiritual things. They can force one inwardly, but they have difficulty when they come working outwardly into the world. You can feel the steam to do things, but there's this contrary deja vu, this sun-moon opposition. The Sagittarius, there's always so many different challenges, so many things included, not included. There's no end of things to talk. There'd be difficulty to sift through what's more important than another when there's so many things going on. Let's just scramble this, scramble that, do these things. Take care of it. I'll do it. So, okay. When we saw sun, moon, and ascended the fire and air, it was communicated and fire and air to act and to be expressive. It's not really, we didn't get a sympathetic sense, and there's a bit of a sympathetic sense in this Mercury and Venus, but they're both cloistered, so it's affected with our normal cloistered local groups in that way. And the sun Uranus is, we can be cloistered here, but I'm doing this, I'm not sitting there, I'm unique, I'm different. I'll use the power to make it the way I want it to be, the way it should be. So he really is representing his archetype. Now, his Mars is in Leo in the 12th house. There's no bad aspects to it. It's not afflicted. It's afflicted by being in the 12th house, which means energy doesn't work right, or there's enemies, or it works wrong, or there's something underneath it, like anger and violence are his own undoing. That's the house of conscience, of your own undoing, of repercussions. And yes, Saturn, Mars, and Pluto both in this 12th house, both in Leo. So his pride and his arrogance and his action and his force, it almost draws a little too much attention to himself. He might get away with it, but he draws the attention to himself, and not much will accumulate from that. He won't get a lot done. So he's not going to be doing much. He can be stopping a lot of things with his cautious Mercury Venus. He's not going to be doing much. He sees it as, I'm doing this, I'm stopping this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm setting this, I'm building a wall, I'm doing these things, and we're stopping the immigrants, we're stopping these things. He sees himself as doing that. He's the champion of the past. But in terms of doing things in the future, it's not really progressive. So you would think the Sun Uranus is very progressive, and he would see it that way. But the Moon opposed it. It's the opposite. It's not. It's insecure and disturbed. So it narrows his scope or his field, even though he has the world as his field. So here's a person with Mars in the 12th house who's the head of one of the bigger armies in the world. Not China's, but the head of a big military in the world, and he aligns with Saudi Arabia and Israel, and North Korea and questionable places. And it doesn't really. He's doing things in these dark areas, not doing things so much with the allies or his friends. He takes his own move. He pulls out of NATO. He pulls out of teams, out of groups to do his own thing. When they're not doing what he wants or what he feels is right, boom, he's gone. But it's not about discussion. It's not about consensus, not about group things. He's not a consensus person. But even though there's good aspects to that Mars, he got himself to be president. He got him up to be the best. He sees himself as the best. But it can be his own doing because it's not. It's in the 12th house. There's a difficulty here. Okay, it's supposed to be any sense of anger, any sense of force. His ability to act on impulse is strongly there, but it could get him in trouble because he's projecting what he wants to see, but he's not reacting sensitively to other people. It's how it's affecting his projection. That's the difficulty of the Mars in the 12th. It's conjunct his ascendant, so you see his strength and his arrogance, his confidence in himself. It's bravado, but that energy is there, and he has the Leo ascendant on top of that. So we'll come to the Leo ascendant in a minute, because these are all significant things in terms of who he is and how he's gotten to the place where he is now. Okay, so he's naturally driven to be in charge, to be in position, to take authority, to run his own companies, do his own things. And with the Taurus Midheaven, he likes to make money. He wants to make money, doesn't want to lose it. Okay, so Mars. Okay, his Jupiter is with Neptune. Jupiter is square to Saturn. That's not a bad aspect. That's a good sense of practical thinking. And it trines the Sun as Jupiter's in the money house in Libra. So he understands it. He has good money. He has good things. He'll share it with you. His position has got him beautiful wives and kids, even though when he looks back, it's a complicated scenario.